So in my last video, I talked about books that I think are overhyped, which means that in this video, we need to talk about some hyped books or some books that deserve the hype. Now, honorable mention, because I'm not going to talk about the books that I talk about regularly on the channel or that are really, really popular that you, if you've watched my videos for any period of time, you probably already know that I love, because otherwise, is the video really helpful to you? So honorable mention to all the great books and series and authors that I talk about a lot, or at least mention in passing a lot when talking about great fantasy stories. Imagine One Piece is here. I don't think I have a physical copy of One Piece anymore because I read it online, but obviously I talk about it a lot. Also, and I couldn't find my copy of Gardens of the Moon, which is why Dead House Gates is here. Also, and. Thanks Malazan fans for being super patient with me about continuing this series. I'm starting book 3 in May. It's just that book 2 hurt me so bad. We needed a break. But I'm really, really excited to get back into it. So book 3 will be read soon. Anyway, honorable mention to all the great and amazing fantasy series that, you know, are really, really hyped, that you may already know that I love. So we're gonna be talking about some hyped books that absolutely deserve the hype, that aren't like the mostest hyped books. No, I didn't. And the way I'm determining hype here isn't going to be just like me and my friends like it. It's going to be they've won awards, they've had adaptations, they're on the New York Times bestselling list, like some sort of tangible proof that they are being hyped by the world larger and not just like me and my friends like it. First book on this list is something that I recently read that I absolutely adored and strongly recommend. It's called The Last Quintista. This is a middle grade sci-fi, but if you're not really into middle grade, I still recommend checking it out because it really didn't feel very middle grade to me, other than the fact that the main character is, how old was she? Like 10? She's young, but she's mature, she's not making flighty, stupid choices. And as far as the setting and the things that we're discussing and the things that we're doing in this novel, it read very mature to me. And I'm a fan of middle grade, so like I've got no reason to talk down on it. But if you are less likely to pick it up because it's middle grade, I say still give it a shot, or at least still consider it. So Last Quintista, the setting is it's kind of a standard sci-fi setup in that we're on Earth and there is this comet meteor. Well, comet, I was right the first time. It's a comet that is coming and it is on track to hit the Earth. It's going to destroy the Earth. So what we've done is we've gathered the world's biggest, brightest, bestest, the people that are deemed important enough to, we need them to continue civilization. So our protagonist, Petra, is the daughter of two very important people, scientists, botanists, they matter. And so she is going, along with her parents, she is going to go on these ships, these rocket ships that are going to take them to space, where they're going to go into stasis until they can arrive at a new planet to be chloroformed for them to start civilization over again. It's kind of it's a setup that, you know, it's in sci-fi. It's in a lot of sci-fis. This whole like the Earth is going to be destroyed, go into stasis, leave the Earth, problems ensue. So the problem here is that you have a group of people who their job is to watch over the important people. They're called the Watchers, if I'm remembering correctly. And their goal is to monitor the stasis situation, monitor the people, and also other things to make sure that they get there on time. These people will die and they'll have kids and die, and their kids will have kids and die, and you know, hundreds and hundreds of years later, the grandkids of the grandkids of the grandkids will be the ones that arrive on Earth because they have to stay awake to monitor the stasis. Things go wrong for a whole number of reasons, and I'm not going to explain to you any of those reasons because I feel like that's too much information. But our main character, Petra, so in the description it actually says that there is a collective that has taken over the ship that's bent on erasing the sins of humanity's past. So, okay, so it's all right for me to tell you that much of the conflict. Anyway, our main character is a cuentista, a storyteller. She believes in the power of stories and of remembering our past and remembering where we came from, and not trying to erase, basically she's against what the collective is doing. And as people's memories are being erased, as people are being interfered with on this ship, because of a series of circumstances, she is the last one to actually have memories from Earth. And as a storyteller, she believes strongly in the power of remembering, and remembering where you come from, and remembering your past and your culture and your family, and not having that robbed of you. So she is fighting for her memories and fighting for other people to remember. And it's this really, really powerful story that is both very engaging, but also I think just what's being discussed in it is so beautiful. I absolutely love our main character. I love her bond with her family. I love her bond with her grandmother. I love her stories, and I love her not being particularly strong or powerful, but still finding a way to fight, and her goodness of heart, how much she wants to help people and be a part of not allowing the collective to accomplish what they want to. I just thought that it was such a moving story, but also such an engaging story, and it's not very long. It's 300 pages. It was such a fast read, but oh my goodness, such an emotional one too. Definitely deserves the hype. Next one is a tiny bit of a cheat because it is a book that I talk about a lot, but it isn't a book that I think, as far as like the wider world, the mainstream kind of world, knows about Fredrik Backman as much, though he is getting more it's getting more well-known, especially since A Man Called Ovie has been adapted. And yes, I do talk about this a lot, so forgive me for this one little bitty cheat, but he deserves the hype. Fredrik Backman is actually my favorite author, and I've read almost everything that he's published. He has the final book in the Beartown series coming out probably in 2023 as soon as they finish translating it, and I'm dying to read it. A Man Called Ovie is actually his first book, and I put off reading it. It's actually one of the last books of his that I've read, and I put off reading it for so long because it's his first book and because I love him so much, and I was just afraid that there would be a step down because, you know, you learn, you grow, you start somewhere, and then you ideally get better in whatever it is that you're doing. And a lot of times the first book isn't as great as, you know, the 10th book, but oh my goodness, it's so good. Again, it's just such a moving story. This is about a grumpy old man that has a lot of prejudice, that just in general, just he isn't great. And he just wants to be left alone. He's tired of life, he's tired of people, and he wants to be left be. But he isn't left be. And through that, he finds a family, and he finds a new place in life. And it's just one of the most beautiful stories, and Ovie is one of the most real characters I've ever read. It's hard to kind of give you a good summary or a good synopsis of this book because it is so character focused that the plot, it's kind of hard for me to give you a spoiler-free plot. But what I can say is that I have not experienced a book hangover like I have with this one in a long time. Ovie was a part of my life. He was a person that I interacted with daily, and when I stopped interacting with him, I actually felt like my neighbor had moved. I actually felt like an active part of my life was gone because he was so real to me, and it was just such a beautiful story. Next, we'll talk about Kindred, which I don't have the physical copy of because I lent it to my mom and then she lost it. It's okay, I can buy another one. Kindred has also won a bunch of sci-fi awards. This is more of a soft sci-fi. It's about this woman named Dana, if I'm remembering correctly, who she has a husband, she has a life, she has a job, she's fine. And then all of a sudden, she's pulled into the past. And there is this young boy who's drowning, and she runs and she saves him. And it doesn't go well in other ways, but then she's snapped back to present day. But like, she's muddy and she's dirty and she still looks like she just saved a boy from drowning, yet she is not in that place anymore. And it's a story of this woman, this young Black woman who is pulled into the past, into, I don't remember, I think it's the 1700s. I don't have the book here to reference it, but she's pulled into a time where it's very dangerous for her to be there because of potentially getting sick, because of eating bad meat, because of being bitten by certain bugs, because of the doctors of this time are basically witch doctors, and because she doesn't have any free papers, and she's a Black woman in the 1700s. So it's very much a low sci-fi. The only sci-fi element really is this time travel and the fact that we don't understand why, and she doesn't understand why she's getting pulled into the past and then put back into her present timeline and pulled and this back and forth, and she has no understanding of why this is happening. She has no control over it, and she doesn't understand what the connection is, but there is a connection, there is a reason, and it's her trying to figure that out, but then it's also her trying to survive the time that she's living in. And don't go into it expecting like some epic sci-fi tale. It really is more of a slice of life story. It's very slow moving. It's very day to day with Dana. And I loved it. I loved the daily simple suspense of how is she going to overcome this next obstacle. I loved how immersive it was, and I loved Dana as a character. Again, it was just a really moving story as well. Next is a classic, and I hesitated to put a classic on this list because basically every classic is hyped. I mean, at least any popular classic, but I think this counts because it recently inspired a very, very popular Netflix adaptation. Probably wrong. A Netflix show that was called the same thing, but very different. It's called The Haunting of Hill House. I have the book. I haven't actually watched the show, but I've been told emphatically that it is very different from the book, and probably won't watch the show, but the book was excellent. This group of people are called to this house. So there's this house that in very strange, mundane ways, it seems to be haunted. Something seems wrong. Like simple things like the shadows are too long, or the walls don't seem to connect quite right, or doors will slam shut on their own accord. And it's these simple little creepy things that happen, but you can't actually say like haunted, that shadow's too long, right? Like it's stuff that's unsettling and unnerving and feels wrong, but you can't actually say it's not enough for anyone to believe you that something is off here. So these group of people, they're here to live in the house and to try to understand the house and figure out what's going on here. And it was so good at, well, again, it's a very slow moving, it's not this like extremely fast-paced, creepy serial killer in the house kind of story. It's very slow moving. It's very day to day. I love books that are super filled with small suspenses, that it feels like nothing's happening, but the suspense, the atmosphere, the way it's written makes it so creepy. Oh, that's my jam. And that's what this book is. It's daily little things that may happen in your real life, like a door slamming in the next room and it's like, I'm home alone. Why did that happen? And that kind of stuff doesn't typically freak me out. Like if a door slams in the other room, then usually it's like, okay, am I by myself? Yes. Have I been killed before by one of these random things happening? No, probably not going to happen today. Probably not the best self-preservation tactics, but typically I can reason myself out of being afraid of these things. But Haunting of Hill House is one of those books that makes me a little bit more scared because it takes these daily occurrences that can happen to us and it makes them so much more creepy. And then as the book goes on, it elevates and it escalates, and it just like more actual haunting things are happening. I just think that Shirley Jackson did a phenomenal job of creating daily suspense, stuff that feels unnatural, but you can't really explain. She made it so much more scary. And then when she started elevating things, it almost takes those daily occurrences and makes it like, okay, when's this gonna start happening? When's all the other stuff gonna start happening? I just loved this book. Next is Uzumaki, which is another horror. This is a manga horror, and this is a classic manga that is very, very highly regarded. And it's a collection of short stories about this town that is haunted by spirals. So this shape, the spiral, seeps into people's very being and changes them, and It's terrible. It's a collection of short stories, but it's all connected to this town. And so we are following different people that are affected by the spirals in different ways. And there's no way out of this town. If you try to leave, it's a spiral. You just come right back to it. It's a wild ride. It's so disturbing. It's body horror. So if you're not into, I mean, who's into, I am. If you don't want anything that's very disturbing, this isn't the one, especially because it's a manga, so it's very visual. But I thought this was brilliant because not only was it this very creepy, unsettling, weird, disturbing story, but it connected so well. At first, there was a point where I felt like, all right, let's move on. I feel like we're done here. We've explored all the many, many ways that this town affects, or the spirals affect this town. Like, we're good. But it ended up circling back around and all connecting in just the most satisfying way. Plus, he didn't just use the spirals, this is my favorite thing, he didn't just use the spirals and use this concept to scare people, he actually had some really serious conversations within the story as well, like when a town of people is in this desperate situation, how far will they go? And what kind of things that they believe will they start to compromise in order to survive? And it was just so good. Interrupting myself to say that I'm actually replacing the next book with a book that I just finished recently, and that's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because this book deserves to be here. My goodness, does it deserve the hype. This is easily one of the funniest books I have ever read. I think I underlined something on every single page. It is loaded with ridiculous, off-the-wall, yet cohesive, amazing lines. So this book starts off following Arthur, who his house is about to be bulldozed down. It's about to be destroyed to make room for a new highway, and he's very upset about it. But then right before that happens, or right as it happens, the world ends up being destroyed because it's destroyed to make room for an intergalactic highway, which is just poetry. Anyway, the unfortunate thing is that it was destroyed at the wrong time. There was an error. You'll get into that if you decide to read the book. But he's also accompanied by this character called Ford, who is an alien who's been stuck on Earth for a while, but he gets himself and Arthur off the Earth right before it's destroyed, and they have this amazing adventure through space where they encounter some of the most hilarious, ridiculous characters, and Arthur is understandably upset about his situation, and Ford doesn't quite sympathize. There's amazing off-the-wall lines where like, oh, I'm not gonna find it really quickly and easily, but like, I can't die right now. I still have a headache. If I go to heaven with a headache, I'll be cross and I won't be able to enjoy it. Which is just the logic of Arthur throughout this entire book. We have incredible characters like Marvin, who introduces himself by saying, "You should know I'm incredibly depressed today," and then someone responds to him by saying, just do this, it'll take your mind off of things. And he says, "It won't work. I have an exceptionally large mind." And then later says, "I'm 5 billion times more intelligent than you. Just thinking on your level makes my head hurt." Every character we get is their own unique brand of chaos, but it's all such focused chaos. There's also, in the chaos and in the humor and in the off-the-wall ridiculousness, there's a lot of introspection happening, like philosophers that barge into the room and don't want the answer to life, the universe, and everything, because if they get the answer, then what are they going to sit around and debate over? Which is it's simple things like that where you could just move by, have a laugh, and keep going, or you could actually take a second and reflect on what's being said through this humor, and that's all throughout the book, and I just really enjoy it. It's just one of the funniest books I've ever read. One of the most enjoyable books I've ever read. I have heard about this book my entire life. It's obviously a classic that is extremely well loved. I've always thought that I wouldn't enjoy it. I ended up trying it, and from the prologue was hooked, and it never lost my attention. I'm already reading book 2, and if it continues to be as good as it is, it deserves to be on this list too. Another book that I think I've talked about this book. I talked about it quite a bit when I first read it, but I really don't talk about it that much, that I do think it deserves it, and that is Jurassic Park. Again, it's another really popular book. I mean, it's gotten an adaptation, and the adaptation is far more popular than the book itself, but this was my gateway into Michael Crichton. Someday I'll learn how to say his name. And it is so much fun. I grew up watching Jurassic Park, the movie. I love the movie. I like the book better. And usually it's whichever one you read or watch first, right? Usually it's, I don't know, that happened to me with Lord of the Rings too. I adored this because the way this author does his storytelling, at least in the books of his that I've read so far, is that he has a very slow start where he kind of lays down the concept and the science and the ideas. And then once you have the baseline, it's very slow, but once you have but it's interesting. I think the way he discusses science is very engaging. Once you have the baseline, then he just runs. It's just an all-out sprint. And you know the story, and I do think that the adaptation is good. I actually think that there were some things that the movie changed from the book that were well suited. The change was actually a great idea, and then there were other things that I feel like the movie took some of the logic out of things. Like, there are several scenes in the movie that it's like, what? Just do this, and then you won't be in danger anymore. Why are you being stupid? Because that's just the way it is. But in the book, a lot of these scenes are done differently in a way that's a lot more logical, that makes a lot more sense. And this is not me bashing the movie. It's just movies a lot of times will go for the theatrics before they'll go for the logic. And the book went for the logic over the theatrics, even though there were absolutely tons of theatrics. It's such an action-packed, fun, exciting story. It tells the story, but I just liked the way it told it a little bit better in the book. I strongly recommend it. I thought that it was so much fun. It was so smart. It was so exciting. I love dinosaurs, and I'm always happy for a dinosaur book, and this one was just really, really well done. I strongly, strongly recommend it. I think that a lot of people prefer the movie because it is such an action-packed story, so seeing it on screen is just fun, but there are so many things that I think the book did better. Not to bash the movie again, I like the movie, but oh my goodness, the book has the action and the excitement and the craziness along with the logic. Oh my goodness, I loved this book. And finally, we are going to end this list. Nevermore, I'll be brief on this one because it is very, very popular, but it is about this girl named Morrigan Crow who she, on her 11th, she's cursed. And so everybody that encounters her or spends time with her, bad luck, she carries bad luck, bad things happen to them, and they don't like her for it. And on her 11th birthday, she's destined to die because of reasons. And this guy named Juniper, who's amazing, comes in and whisks her away to this other world where it's whimsical and magical and beautiful. And it's such a nonsensical world, but very grounded. And Morrigan has to go through these trials in order to be allowed to stay and to be given a place in this world. And Jupiter believes in her so much, and he gives her a family, and he gives her, he shows her her value. And it's, again, oh my goodness, again, there's so many serious things that Morrigan has to face and difficult emotional stuff that she has to work through, but it's balanced with all these really exciting and fun trials, and it's balanced with this humor and with these phenomenal characters. And it's very whimsical. It's a soft magic that just feels very tangible and real and fun. And I had so much fun with it. I've read the first 2 books. There's one more out that I need to read, and then the 4th book is being published this year, and I think I'm gonna read them all because I'm just having a great time. So there you go. Those are several books that I think are hyped in the worldwide and deserve it. They deserve this hype. I have loved them and highly recommend them. I specifically kept it to 8 books because there were 8 books / authors that I had in my overhyped, so I tried to keep that same number for books that deserve the hype, but this list really could go on. I'll see you again soon. Bye.